Yellowstone's smoking bomb. Yellowstone National Park, the oldest and most famous national park in the United States, sits on top of one of the biggest volcanoes on Earth. Yellowstone's volcano is so big that many scientists call it a supervolcano. As the name suggests, supervolcanoes are much bigger and more powerful than ordinary volcanoes, and their eruptions can be exceptionally violent and destructive. When volcanoes erupt, they can kill plants and animals for miles around. When a supervolcano explodes, it can threaten whole species with extinction by changing the climate across the entire planet. What causes a supervolcano to erupt? No supervolcano has erupted in recorded human history. However, in the 2.1 million years that Yellowstone has sat over the supervolcano, scientists believe that the park has experienced 3 supereruptions. Geologists who study Yellowstone's supervolcano have pieced together the sequence of events that probably cause a supereruption. First, an intense plume of heat pushes up from deep within Earth. The extreme heat melts rock and creates a huge chamber a few miles below the surface. The chamber slowly fills with a pressurized mix of magma, melted rock, water vapor, carbon dioxide, and other gases. As additional magma accumulates in the chamber over thousands of years, the land on the surface above it begins to move up to form a dome, inches at a time. As the dome moves higher, cracks form along its edges. When the pressure in the magma chamber is released through the cracks in the dome, the gases suddenly explode, creating a violent supereruption and emptying the magma chamber. Once the magma chamber is empty, the dome collapses, leaving a giant caldera, or crater, in the ground. Yellowstone's caldera, which covers a 25 by 37 mile, or 40 by 60 kilometer, area in the state of Wyoming, was formed after the last supereruption, some 640,000 years ago. A waking giant? 1870. Army officer Gustavus Dohn explores the region that will later become Yellowstone National Park. He notices there is a huge open space, or a basin, surrounded by mountains and concludes that it is the crater of a huge, extinct volcano. 1950s. Harvard graduate student Francis Boyd discovers a thick layer of heated and compacted ash at Yellowstone and determines that it is the result of a geologically recent eruption. 1970s. Supervolcano expert Bob Smith of the University of Utah finds that land near the caldera has risen by some 30 inches, 76 centimeters, in 3 decades, proving the supervolcano is alive. 1985. A number of small earthquakes strike the area, causing the land to sink. Over the next decade, it sinks 8 inches, 20 centimeters. 2004 to 2007. The ground above the caldera rises upward at rates as high as 2.8 inches, 7 centimeters a year. 2007 to 2010. The ground rise slows to 1 centimeter or less a year, but the ground has risen about 10 inches, 25 centimeters, in just a few years. It's an extraordinary uplift, says Smith, because it covers such a large area and the rates are so high. How violent is a supereruption? After each supereruption at Yellowstone, the whole planet felt the effects. Scientists theorize that gases rising high into the atmosphere mix with water vapor to create a haze that reduce sunlight, causing a period of cooling across the globe. It is estimated that the combined debris from the 3 eruptions was so vast it could have filled the Grand Canyon. The most recent catastrophic eruption, about 640,000 years ago, poured out 240 cubic miles, 1,000 cubic kilometers, of rock, lava, and ash. A column of ash rose some 100,000 feet, 30 kilometers, into the atmosphere, and winds carried ash and dust across the western half of the United States and south to the Gulf of Mexico. Closer to the supervolcano, thick clouds of ash, rocks, and gas, superheated to 1,470 degrees Fahrenheit, 800 degrees Celsius, rolled over the land, This volcano's lava and debris destroyed everything within its devastating range, filling entire valleys and forming layers hundreds of feet thick. Will a supervolcano erupt again? Predicting when an eruption might occur is extremely difficult, in part because scientists still do not understand all the details of what is happening under the caldera's surface. Moreover, they have kept continuous records of Yellowstone's activity only since the 1970s, a tiny slice of geologic time, making it hard to draw conclusions. However, scientists theorize that Yellowstone's magma chamber expands periodically from a plume of hot rock moving up from deep inside Earth. As the chamber expands, it pushes the land above it upward. According to this theory, when the plume of rock decreases, the magma cools and becomes solid, allowing the land above to fall back. Scientists believe that Yellowstone has probably seen a continuous cycle of rising and falling land over the past 15,000 years. Geophysicist and supervolcano expert Bob Smith of the University of Utah believes the rise and fall cycle of Yellowstone's caldera will likely continue. These calderas tend to go up and down, he says. We call this a caldera at unrest. The net effect over many cycles is to finally get enough magma to erupt, and we don't know what those cycles are. So is the supervolcano going to explode again? Some kind of eruption is highly likely at some point. The chances of another catastrophic supereruption are anyone's guess. It could happen in this century, or 100,000 years from now. No one knows for sure. The Yellowstone eruptions. 3 major blasts have shaken Yellowstone National Park during the past 2 million years. The smallest of these, 1.3 million years ago, produced 280 times more material than the 1980 eruption of Mount St. Helens. After the 2 biggest eruptions, winds carried material from Yellowstone across much of the United States.